Today what we're going to do is we're going to review news site number 3. I've got an hour and 7 minutes, so a nice chunk of time. I've taken down John's solution for news site number 3, and I feel like it's a good idea just to kind of go through every single file just so everyone is exactly on the same page. Once we get there, once we finish up with news site number 3, we'll talk about component lifecycle methods, and we'll jump into news site number 4. Now, I did clone this down last night, just to make sure that this is John's particular branch. I'll make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to run git remote -v, and it is pointed to, and whenever I pull and push from this particular repo, it's going to push to John's branch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run npm install. Actually, I already did. I'm just going to run npm start. So this is going to start running. And in the meantime, well, since this is almost done, so we've got this React app right here. So we've got app nav component at the very top with our navigation bar. We've got our article list with all of our articles inside of here. If I click on a particular article, I can see, if I hover over it, you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, that's localhost 3000/article/2. So it's each individual article. So I'm going to click on it. It does take me to that article page. When I open up the console, and I clear this out, I X this out and make this smaller, and I click on Home, Opinion, World, National Politics, Upshot, New York, Region, and Business, you can see that it is console logging. So the DOM is aware of what I'm actually clicking on. Let's take a look at the code that builds this up. What is the entry point into all React apps? It's actually index.js, but then immediately jumps into app.js. So app.js, index.js, both of those are legitimate answers. I'm going to close this out. It is still running in the background. Let's take a look through it. I'm going to clean up a few things if I had to criticize a few things. So on line 1, there is a React library. And there's also a component library from the node modules called React. This line right here is giving me all of the React functionality. Otherwise, this is just a JavaScript file. I've got news from data news JSON. It's commented out. I probably don't need that, so I'm going to remove it. I'm bringing in the CSS that I wrote myself, the app nav component, React router DOM. I'm bringing in browser router as router with route, home page, and article page. The way that I like to separate this, and this is just more of a stylistic thing, this will function, obviously, as you have seen, perfectly fine on its own. I like to put all the things that I'm bringing in up top, have a line in the middle, and then all the things that I wrote myself underneath. So these are the things that I'm basically just grouping it. These are the things from the outside, from node modules, and these are the things I'm writing myself. All right, so I'm going to go over here, remove a couple of these extra lines. So we've got a class component. It's called app, and it extends from component, meaning that it's inheriting from the component library in the React node module. I've got one method that's just render. Render is you can do basically render is where you're going to return out all the things you're going to see on the page. So inside this return, I've got one element, this one div over here, and I have h1 of app nav component. If I jump back to the screen over here, you'll see at the very top, there's that app nav component. I've got a horizontal rule underneath it. That's this line right underneath the app nav component. And then here's where some of the actual React code starts coming into play. So I've got app nav, handle nav click. Okay, so I know that I'm rendering the app nav component, and then it's going to take one prop called handle nav click. What is a prop and what is state? Justin. Close. So the first part is correct. So Justin said that prop is a property. So prop is, imagine it's just I'm passing some, it's a property that I'm passing down from a parent into a child. So I'm passing in handle nav click from app into app nav. So I'm passing this in. This is a prop. When I reference it within app nav, I'm going to do this.props.handle nav click. And state is basically a class level component class level dictionary of stuff. And we'll see that more in just a little bit. We've got our router over here, so this defines all of our routes. We've got two paths. One of them is slash, and the other one is slash articles, slash article ID. We've got slash articles, slash article ID, which is some number. And I also have slash. If I took you to something called not a route, it doesn't know what to do, so it just kind of silently fails for now. So I'm going to get rid of this and bring us back over here. Whenever anybody makes a request to the slash over here, the component that's going to handle it is homepage. We're importing homepage on line number 6, and it's located within source, pages, homepage, and I'm also going to bring up article page. So homepage is pretty simple. Let's take a look through it. Again, we're making this a React component. We're bringing in the article list component over here. We don't need this. It's quite all right. And you're going to do semicolons for all of them, but you actually don't need semicolons at all. So at the very top, I've got the external things that I'm bringing in, and on the bottom, I have the things that I write myself. We've got another class component. It's called homepage. And at the very top of homepage, homepage has something called state, which is just a JavaScript object, a dictionary in Python. It's just a collection of stuff that the homepage needs to know. And when it first starts, it has something called all articles API data, and it's equal to nothing to begin with. Then we have this thing called component did mount. We might as well talk about lifecycle methods right now then. I'm going to jump to week number 9. We're here on 10:30. We're going to talk about component lifecycles. So this is a component in its natural state. If you ran create React app, this is what you see to begin with. It's everything that we know already. We're bringing in React. There's a logo that spins. There's a CSS file that's already built in. We've got an app that returns from a component. We've got this render with one return statement inside, and then it's just saying, welcome to React. To get started, edit this code and get reload. This is what we've seen every single time. We could have a constructor. It's going to allow us to have things like props. So let's say that we have state equals articles, and articles is an empty array. And then we have something called component did mount. So component did mount is one of the lifecycle methods that comes from React. It's specifically for class components, and this image is the one that I generally like to use. So the way that you read this is that a component has a particular lifecycle, just like a human being has a particular lifecycle, right? We start off as small babies, then we become toddlers, then we become young children, then we become adolescents, then we become young adults, then we become young working people, and then we become middle-aged, then we become old, and then we die. So there's a particular life cycle that all humans have, just as human beings. There's a similar life cycle when it comes to a React component. It starts here at the 12 o'clock position with will mount, and then it dies at the 10 o'clock position with this will unmount. So what you do is you put the word component in front of all these life cycle methods, and that's when you can basically touch the component at a particular time. So the component will mount on the screen, onto the DOM. Before it, once it will mounts to the screen, you can do something at that particular stage of its life. Once the component did mount onto the screen, you can do something at that particular point as well. And these are all the different lifecycle methods, and you'll see that render is one of those lifecycle methods. So before render, it starts at the 12 o'clock position at this will mount. It goes through each one of these lifecycle methods before it hits the render. So it goes through each one of these. Component will mount, did mount, will receive props, should update, and will update all execute before the render. And remember, the render has that return of what comes out to the screen. So you can do a bunch of stuff ahead of time. So a good way to actually show this off is I'm going to go back to Instagram. Let's go with somebody that's not Taylor Swift.
Ronaldo.
Ronaldo. Okay, so we've got Ronaldo up here. We know that Instagram is a React app because Instagram's owned by Facebook, and both Facebook created React. I want to slow this down just so you can see this a little bit more. I'm going to do performance sources. Where is it? Network. Where is it? There it is. I want to slow this down. I don't know where it is. There it is. Thank you. I'm going to make this into slow 3G just to demonstrate what I'm talking about here. I'm going to refresh the page. This is slow 3G. What you'll notice is you can see it right here. It's gray ahead of time. Like when the page first loads, it has different, each individual one of these squares is an individual React component. And each one of those individual React components has its own life cycle. When I refresh this again, using slow, no, this is not slow 3G anymore. Network, thank you, slow 3G, and refresh. This is probably what's happening in the background. Oh, it's already cached. Let's go down to the bottom. You'll see that there are three photos over here, and they're all gray to begin with. Which life cycle method do you think is over there? It's either will mount or did mount onto the screen, right? So essentially what's happening is like they're making API requests in the background, meaning they're reaching out to like their storage of all the photos and all the stuff specific to Ronaldo over here. And they're basically saying, get me these next 3 photos. As that is happening, it's going to be stored as a gray one. And then once the API request fully finishes and I get the actual picture itself, at that point, I'm going to overwrite the gray picture with the actual picture itself. Now, each one of these has its own individual state because I can hover over this. Oh my gosh, this slow 3G is not doing it for me. I can hover over this, and each one has its own individual state. This particular photo of Ronaldo and some other soccer player has 6.4 million likes and 35,000 comments. This other one has a different type of state. It has 11.6 million likes and 43,000 comments. So the idea is behind this is that I can hook into a React component at some point of its life and do any sorts of calculations. The most popular ones that we use are going to be render, did mount, and will update. Yes. Yes, render is a lifecycle method.
Is this something like this concept of hooks and lifecycle?
Yep.
Is that unique to React?
I don't know. I'm not a front-end person, so I can say for certain it is part of React, but I don't know about other places. I'm pretty sure it should be. So jumping back to our code for John over here, we have this did mount. So when the home page first loads onto the DOM, it has a state where all articles API data is nothing. Once it did mount onto the screen, like once the homepage loads onto the DOM for your Google Chrome, it's going to make a request to get all the articles that it needs. Similar to the Instagram thing, once the Instagram page loads, it's going to make a request to get all the extra photos that it didn't already have. So I've got component did mount. I'm going to say let JSON response equals await articles API dot fetch articles. What is this? Articles API. Line number 3, inside of the folder called API, there's an articles API.js. Looks like this is just a place where I list out all the functions where I can call out to another service and get a response back. Right now it's reaching out to localhost 3001, but you could use things like Google Maps and the Goodreads API and like Weather Underground and basically pretty much everything you can make a request to. So again, this one is making a request to fetch articles, which is right down here. It's basically saying I'm going to make a request to localhost 3001 /API/articles. I'm going to wait for the response, and then once it's finished, I'm going to save that as response. At that point, I'm going to turn response into JSON, save that as data, and then return the data back out. So again, I'm making a request. Once it's finished, I'm going to set it equal to response. I'm going to take that response, turn it into JSON. Once that's finished, I'm going to save it as data. Once data is done, I'm going to return that back out to the screen. So I make that request, I get JSON response, and you don't need this return actually. I'm going to set the state of all articles API equal to JSON response rather than null. So again, it loads onto the page, it doesn't have any data. Once it did mount, I'm going to make a request to get the data and then reset it so that there's actually data inside of there. And then from there, I'm going to return the article list right over here. The article list exists because of line 2. Jumping over into components, going into article list again. There's a whole bunch of stuff here, but let's just finish up here. So article list, I'm passing down a prop from homepage into article list. Article list is basically saying, you have to give me stuff in order for me to render. So that is the list of articles, which is this.state.allArticles API. Component did mount comes before render, which is why article list always has stuff inside of it. Jumping over to article list, again, we're still on the home page here, this localhost 3000. Now, what John has done is he's created what's called a functional component. There's class-based components, which has the concept of state and lifecycle methods. There's also functional components, which have also kind of state, and lifecycle methods are known as hooks. So we've mentioned this before. There's a lot of React code that's already written. If you're going to work on an existing React app, it's going to have class-based components. So you're going to need to know that. All new development at this point is recommended that people move towards this functional components over here. So you unfortunately are going to need to know both. One has class, one has function. So on line number 1, we're bringing in React, we're bringing in article teaser, and we've got this function article list. It takes in some props. Again, if we jump back to home page, article list is passing down props called the article list. So what I'm doing here is I am going to be taking from the props something called articles and handle title click. Handle title click. Where's handle title click? Okay, I'm going to get rid of that then. I don't know how it works then. Oh, we'll find out. So we're creating a constant called articles and handle title click from props. So it's what this is doing is saying inside of props, there should be a key called articles and a key called handle title click. I'm going to create 2 constants within this particular article list component called article and handle title click because I'm just taking it out from props. I've got a function called create article teasers. It's a fat arrow function, which is going to return. I'm mapping over all the articles so that each one has an article and an index. And from there, I'm going to create a bunch of article teasers. I'm deconstructing it over here, so I'm spreading it. So I'm taking all the contents of article and spreading it into article teaser. I've got a key, I've got an ID, and when I click on it, handle title click is fired off. And then at the return at the very bottom, I've created a div, which is basically saying, are there articles? If so, create the article teasers. And that's what gives me a bunch of article teasers. Is this kind of review useful, or is this kind of painstaking? Okay, I think it's painstaking, but as long as you enjoy it. I'm not sure where handle title click is coming from. Okay, let's just chase this down for right now. What's that? It's no. So so on line 5, props. What in homepage? I'm calling article list, right? And I'm passing articles over here. When I jump into article list, I'm passing in props. There's a key called articles, and I have access to it right over here. I can also do props.articles, but I want to make it a little bit easier for myself, so I'm deconstructing it right over here. But there's also handle title click, which doesn't seem to exist because I'm not passing it down from here. Yeah, let's jump down a little bit more. So let's jump into article teaser. It's found on line number 2. So I'm just going to make a little shortcut here because I don't want to keep doing this. I'm going to Command T, just type in article teaser. And I can open this up. Oh my gosh, okay, let's take a look. I'm going to get rid of a whole bunch of extra things I don't need, fix up some spacing. Okay, let's take a look. It looks like article teaser is not using handle title click at all, which is why this function works. So I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm also going to get rid of this. So just to go back one more step, we load the app.js is the main entry point of the app. That's why it's the first tab. Whenever I visit slash on line 19, home page component is taking care of it. Tab number 2. Tab number 2 has no articles to begin with. Once the component mounts onto the screen, it's making a request to get all the articles and then override state with it. Once I have that, I'm going to pass down that list of articles into article list, third component right over here. Article list takes in properties. I'm passing in some props. The thing that I'm passing in is called articles. Tab number 3, article list. I've got const articles equals props. What's happening here, this is what's called deconstruction. Inside of the props, there is an articles key. I'm going to take that and save it as articles over here. And then inside the return, it's saying, if there are articles that are passed in, then I'm going to run create article teasers. This and is basically say true and true or true and false. So this right side will only execute if the left side is true. Remember on the first week we talked about if you and your date are having a good time, it's a good date. If one of you is not having a good time, it's not a great date. So this is, in order for this whole thing to evaluate to true, this has to evaluate to true, and this has to evaluate to true. This needs to execute. So create article teasers is going to iterate using the map function over the list of articles. So I have each individual article and its index. I'm taking the article teaser. I'm creating an article teaser component from there, spreading the article, and then having an ID with the key and the index. So let's jump down. Let's continue on. We've got article teaser, and we're going to fix up a few things. So we're importing React. We're importing the link from React Router DOM. We've got a functional component. I'm going to fix up a little bit just in terms of like spacing, just so it's a little easier to read. That's all that needs to happen. So again, if we take, I'm going to split real quick. We take a look here on the left. Remember, we're creating an article teaser. We're spreading the contents of article. So again, articles is passed down from homepage after we get all the articles back. We're iterating over each one to have article. We're spreading the contents inside of here. And the contents are ID, title, and created date. Again, we're deconstructing over here. Inside of props, there's a key called ID. I want to grab it. There's a key called ID, and I want to grab its contents. There's a key called title, and I want to grab its contents. There's a key called created date, and I want to grab its contents. All right, so I'm going to create a path called /articles/ID. That makes sense to me because I'm passing down that ID number from right there. And I'm going to return a div with a link to the path. There's going to be a title on the page and then a created date right underneath. Got a title on the page and the created date right underneath it. And this is actually a link. So when I do click on it, it's going to take me to /articles/1. If I were you, because I'm not referencing path ever again, I might actually just do it this way. Just make sure that still works. Let's go back to the home page. Click on this, and it still works. Questions on home page and how to basically trace this down? No? Okay. So this is what I'm going to do. I could do the same thing with article page, but then I would run out of time. So I am going to bring this up. Bring up a new window. All right. I'm going to CD to my desktop. I'm going to list everything out. I'm going to CD into new site 4. I'm going to list everything out. You'll notice I brought in the source folder already. I did this last night just to save time for today. I've already done npm install. The way that you can tell is because I have node modules. I'm going to open this whole thing up inside of VS Code, the current window. And I'm just going to run npm start. I'm going to run through actually how to do new site number 4. I'll try to explain as slowly as I can within the context of time. Let's jump over here, and let's just verify that this works the way that we expect. So new site 4, we're going to do 2 big things today. One of them, so we built out the home page and the article page yesterday. Today we're going to build out the section page. It's going to be very similar to article page. And we're also going to create a search function on the home page so that when we start typing on things, it'll basically shrink down the volume of like titles just to match the title. So if I type in, let's go back to, if I type in Nostrum over here, then only Nostrum will stay on the page. Every other one will go away. So we're going to do 2 things, build out the second page and build out that search. So the initial setup, I copied and pasted the entire source directory from John directly into new site number 3. From there, I ran npm install, and I just ran npm start. Everything works as expected. If I take a look over here, I can still click on world a bunch of times, and it'll measure that inside of here in the console. I'm able to click on each individual title and be taken to the article page. Makes sense to me. All right, now we're going to talk about the section page. So let's read through this. The section page is going to be used to display articles that belong to a specific section, specifically opinion, world, national, or business. The section page should be loaded when a user clicks on one of those options in the top navigation. So right now, when I click on this, nothing happens except for just console logging a bunch of stuff, but I want this to actually take me to the right place. For example, clicking on the world link at the top of navigation would redirect you to this particular page. All right, so we need to do a few things. Number 1, create a section page inside of source pages. So again, we know the entry point is app.js. App.js, I still need to bring this up a little bit. Sorry, let me bring this up. This is driving me insane. There. All right, so we have homepage, article page. I'm going to create another one called section page. So I copy the whole line by putting my cursor anywhere on the line above it and just doing copy. We'll copy the whole line, paste, we'll paste the whole line directly below. I want to change article page. I'm going to highlight this, Command D, and I'm going to just call this section page. All right. Which means that I actually need to go inside of pages and create something called section page.js. It looks like I probably need to, let's see what it says. Create the section page.js inside of source pages, define the route, /sections/section ID to point to this particular page. I believe we've done this already on line 20 with articles. So it's more or less, I'm kind of doing pattern recognition at this point. Copying line 20, changing article to section. Okay, let's take it too long. So let's review what I just did. I made another route saying that whenever anybody makes a request to /sections/section ID, the section page on line 21, which points to line 8 up here, is going to be in charge of that. Section page is over here, completely empty for right now. So we've done number 1, we've created that section page.js. We've done number 2, we've defined that route. Within section page.js, utilize the fetch articles by section function that you created in new site number 3, challenge to retrieve articles by specific section, and store the response in state. I have no idea what this means. Let's put it all right here for now. Is there something that we've done that's pretty much the same thing? Which one?
Article search.
Yep, article page. So I'm actually just going to copy this entire thing and paste it over here. There's a few things I'm going to change. So let's read through each line, make sure that everything is good. We've got React component. We definitely need that. We definitely need article, maybe article API. Okay, that makes sense to me. We need to change this for sure because this is no longer the article page. This is the section page. So I'm going to do this, press Command D to get the one on the bottom. Just say section page. All right, so when it first starts, section page has a single article API data as null. And once it did mount onto the screen, I don't need this return. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a request to articles API, but it specifically said I need to fetch articles by section. So instead of fetch article by ID, I'm going to pass in the section. Now, if I open up articles API, there is a fetch article by section function that we created. It takes in a section. Similarly, if you take a look at fetch articles by ID, it takes in an ID. So I think all I need to do is change this so that it's this.props.match instead of article ID. I'm going to call it section ID. Section ID comes from the URL, which comes from this. Section ID, this is what I'm looking for. I can call this boop. And then I would just change this to boop. But I'm not going to do that. All right. Single article API. Well, this is technically a list of articles, no?
Right.
Okay, so let's change this to section articles. So I've got state equals section articles equals null. So when we first start, there are no articles inside of the section page. Once the component did mount onto the screen, I'm going to make a request to the articles API, using this fetch articles by section, and I'm going to set the state. Remember, we don't alter it directly. Section articles is equal to JSON response. Maybe I'll just call this. Actually, no, I'll just keep it as JSON response. Once this fires off, the next component lifecycle method that fires that you have written is render. Render is going to create an article list. So I'm going to actually go inside of homepage at this point. Take this, put it inside of section page. I don't think I need this. But let's just, I only want to render this when there are articles. So let's just say this.state.articles and that. I don't want article list to fire off because I don't want it to like render something that's not there unless there are articles already inside of state. So when it first loads up, section articles. If there's nothing inside of section articles, I don't want this to execute. So this would be false, and then everything would stop running at that point. But when there are section articles, I do want to load up the article list. So I'm going to say article list equals this.state.section articles. I think that's it. Let's just see if this works. So if I can go to /sections/world. Oh my God. Okay. What does it say? Article list is not defined on 22. So article list is here, but looks like I didn't import it. But it looks like I also have something else. Article list, article is not used anymore. So let me just highlight this and just go article list. Save. Get rid of this. Let's see if it works. All right. So what you'll notice is that I have, let's say we have 12 articles or so. And if I go over here to, let's say the last one is Dolomici. Okay. Let's go into the main page. And the last one, you can obviously, because I'm scrolling more, there are much more articles. And it is not Dolomici, it's Ipsum. It's the last article. So that I know that I'm at least getting just the ones that are relevant to section for world. This is smaller. Let's take a look at opinion. That's smaller still, so we know that we've done this one correctly. Let's just go back for a quick second. Section page, same thing. It's an amalgamation of home page and article page. I'm bringing in React and the component. I'm bringing in the article list and the articles API. These are all the external things I'm going to need in order for this particular component to run. I've got a class-based component with state. When it first loads up, section articles is equal to nothing. Once the component mounts onto the DOM before the render, I'm going to make a request to articles API, grab all the articles from there that are related to my particular section using this.props.match.params.section ID. This last argument over here matches up with this one in app.js. From there, I'm going to set the state so that section articles is equal to the JSON response. And then from there, I'm basically saying, if section articles exists, then load up article list. Same thing as homepage. How are we feeling about the section page so far? Man?
Good.
Okay. Let's continue on then. Let's take a look at the next thing. Past this, okay, we've done that. We've done this, and we've verified that this works. So we've just finished the first section page. Number 2, let's talk about the section links in the appnav.js. So right now, the navigation kind of sucks. Sorry, John, not to pick on you. But right now, it's like we don't really have much. We have a word that says appnav component, and when we click on this, it doesn't actually do anything, unfortunately. So what we're going to do is we're going to change it so that when I do click on this, it'll take me to that particular page. Similarly, what I've done over here, when I highlight over this and I click on it, it'll take me to that particular page. The way we're going to do that, okay, number 1, delete handle nav click that's being passed into appnav in app.js and remove references to it in appnav.js. So let's take a look. Section page is finished. So I've just got app.js open. You'll see that app.js has something called appnav, and it has something called handle click that is going to receive a clicked item and just console log that. I don't need this anymore. So I've just got the navigation over here. I'm going to open up appnav. Oh my gosh, okay. Spacing. Okay. Some spacing issues, but other than that, pretty clean. That's fine. All right, so I don't need handle nav click anymore. Remember, I removed it up here. This is where I'm calling the child component appnav, so I can get rid of this whole thing. Nav items equals sections. I actually don't think you need this. I think I can just do sections.map rather than nav items.map because I'm importing it up here. All right. I don't think you're bringing in props, so you don't need that. Or you can do underscore props just to show that it's not something that I'm using. The underscore in the front says you have access to it, but I'm not using it right now. All right, and there's a handle nav click. I need to get rid of this as well. So again, what I've done is I've removed the handle nav click from app.js. And then down over here inside of appnav.js, I've removed all instances of handle nav click. Let's go back, make sure that everything works. So it looks like it's still here, which is nice. And when I click on world, nothing happens. National politics, upshot, New York region, nothing happens. That's what I wanted to see. I wanted to remove the entire handle nav click. I've done number 1. I've done number 2. I've kind of given you number 3. So in appnav, modify the array of nav items that we're creating by mapping through the array that we're importing from sections.js. So this is what it should have looked like more or less before, and I'm going to have this on the after. Jump back. I changed a few things. Okay, just do return. All right, let's take a look at what we've got over here. So we've got a function called appNav. This is a functional component. It doesn't really have any state or anything. I've got a method called createNavItems, and I've got this return down at the bottom. The return, again, is what you see on the screen. So I've got a navigation bar, and then inside the navigation bar, it's going to execute the function called createNavItems. CreateNavItems here on line 5 is a fat arrow function. It's going to iterate over all the sections that you found here on line number 2. Line number 2, if I just go to sections.json, this is just home, opinion, world, national politics, upshot, everything here. I'm going to map over each one of them. I'm going to call it nav item. Maybe I'll just call this section, actually. Create nav item. So I'm going to iterate over all the sections. I have access to the section and the index. And I'm going to return a bolded key with the index with a link to /sections/section.value. And then what I'm seeing on the screen is section.label. This is the same thing as articles page. Oh, what am I doing? It's homepage, sorry. Homepage has something called article list. Article list, I'm mapping over each one of them. Article teaser has something called link. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating a bunch of links and the value of the links is /sections/ whatever the thing I was clicking on before, and what I see on the screen is section.label. Let's see if this works. And it doesn't. What's broken?
You didn't input
Yeah. It tells us right there. Line 8, link is not defined. Line number 8, I'm using something called link right over there. Capital L. Anytime you see a capital thing that's not imported from the very top, it's definitely wrong. So I'm going to import link from React router. Again, I put all my NPM things at the very top, and the things I'm bringing in myself on the bottom. Okay. Now this is a little bit different. You should not use link outside of a router. That makes sense. The router is in charge of all the routes on your particular application. But if you put links outside of the router is no longer in charge of that. It's kind of like saying, you shouldn't have unregistered phone numbers. Like someone has the master list phone number somewhere, right? You can't create one that's like not listed unless you're like the White House. So, but most people should not have an unregistered phone number. So link is outside of router. Let's chase this down. So link, I'm not seeing a router here. So it's definitely not in this file. So maybe it's because appNav is in the wrong place. App.js, you'll notice that appNav is outside of app.js. Yeah. So it has to be within router. Okay. Do you see anything wrong so far? I just moved it down so that's inside of router. My HR? Yeah, maybe let's. I actually don't think that's the case. It's not in a div. Let's watch what happens. So all I did, again, I just moved appNav into router because it said, hey, you need to have link within routers. appNav has something called link inside of there, and it was outside of router. If I do this and I go back, it's going to blow up and it says a router may only have one child element. Everything needs to be within one div. Sure. Actually, I don't think that makes a difference, but we'll find out. All right. Oh, okay, it's a little uglier. Maybe let's change that up a little bit. Maybe a. Oh.
Put an empty space in between two pairs, so it's sort of out. The one on the other side of one.
All right, so we got something. So appNav is still there. So back to Marcus's point, Marcus kept saying, you got to put HR underneath router. You got to put HR underneath router. Router is just a place where you define all the routes. Yeah.
Stylistically.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah,
That's
that's all it is. It's not.
Sure. So we've got app nav component. That's that giant H1 that we see at the very top. Underneath there's a horizontal rule. And after that, there is all of these things. Actually, you're right. This kind of looks stupid. Where do I put this HR now? Like this? Let's find out. Okay. All right. And I'm actually going to get rid of the app nav component because I probably don't need that. Okay. So I've got everything up over here. And if you notice as I'm hovering over each one of them, it's actually creating a full link on the bottom. So /section/opinion, it's on the bottom left-hand corner. You can't see it if you're on this side of the room. But it does work. Let's verify. If I click on opinion, it goes to opinion. Nice. But if I click on world, nothing happens, nor national, nor politics, nor upshot. Like, it just kind of stays here. What? Well, there's only 4 of them. That is true. But the 4 are opinion, world, national, and business. And I've clicked on opinion. And that's the one that first came up. National and business don't work. There's nothing to take me back. So now we have this. Here is the tip. When we fetch the data, actually, I'm just going to go over here. Inside of app nav, create nav items, sections.nav. All right, so once this first thing loads, what happens is that it fires off in the component. Generally speaking, when we fetch data, it's component did mount. Once the component mounts on the screen, it's done. So it makes one request to get those sections, and then that's it. If I want to have something update when I click on, like when the component updates, like when I click on a new one of these, I want this to update because I'm trying to do new things at this particular point. So I'm not going to use the component did mount. I'm going to use component did update, which is another one of the lifecycle methods. Because again, once the section page class loads onto the DOM, it never does anything again because it does. You didn't tell it to. It's just once the component did mount, I'm done. Once the component did update, I'm going to do something else. So let's grab this component did update. It's not inside of app nav. That's actually inside of section page. You see that async component did mount. Once it mounts, it sets the state and it's done. But I want it to do it also when it did update. So I'm going to jump over. So I'm going to create something called component did update. It's going to take in something called previous props and previous state. I'm actually going to strip all of this out and make it its own individual function. I'm going to call it change articles. I'm just going to dump this in there. Let's find out. All right, so let's just verify that this still works. All I've done is I've taken the heart of change article out of component did mount because I'm gonna reuse it, and I put it inside of a method called change articles, and I'm just calling this .change articles underneath here. Let's see if this still works. Hopefully it will. There's no politics section, so I'm just gonna go here, click on opinion, please, and it still works. Once the component mounts, I'm going to change the articles, and then nothing else happens. But what if I want something to actually did update? So I'm going to do async component did update. Component did update it has access to something called previous props, which we're not going to use. So I'm going to put a underscore in front, and previous state. So component did update is a lifecycle method. it has access to the old props and the old state that you used to have. So I'm going to do a quick check, basically saying if the previous state is equal to this state, I'm going to change articles. So let's read through this. I have, once the component mounted, I'm going to get all the articles and display them on the page. If the component updates, I want to make sure, hey, does the state that used to exist equal the current state? Meaning, like, has nothing changed? In the case that is the case, then change the articles again. So if all goes well, I'm going to be able to go to the home, click on opinion, please work, click on world, click on national, click on politics. There's no politics, there's no upshot, there's no region, but there is a business. And we can see that it is updating. Like whenever the component updates, I'm going to make a new request to basically get those particular articles rather than all the articles. I'm going to power through for this last little bit. The final bit we have is article search. So we want to add the ability to search for articles on the home page. And the high-level things we need to build are, one, add a new function inside of Articles API that accepts a search term, constructs a filter object using that search term, and then fetches data from the API. This is probably something that we've already done, something very similar at least. And then add an input box to the homepage component that calls the function above and updates state. So the first thing is to create a function within Articles API where we can search the articles based on text that we pass in. This should almost be identical to fetch articles by section. Save a little bit of time. I am going to grab this and jump into Articles API and put this at the bottom. I've got a function. It's an asynchronous function called search articles. I'm going to export it down here at the bottom so that I can use it again. And it's going to take an argument called text to search for. I'm going to make a request to localhost 3001 /articles/API where title I like. Where title I like text to search for. And then from there, I'm going to turn it into JSON and return the JSON out. It's identical to this thing over here, except that there's an extra layer where it's, instead of section is equal to this, it's going to be title is case insensitive like the text that I'm searching for. So I've got that. And I've got a home page. Right? So as I mentioned above, you want to add a text input into home page. Why not use React Bootstrap's nicely styled text input? Remember that you need to import all the libraries from React Bootstrap at the top of the file. So let's just grab this first. We're on the home page. I'm going to bring in comment that out for right now. Why not bring in the nicely styled text input? It looks like this is here. So I'm going to grab this. And I'm just going to put this at the very top of the page. Cool. All right, so it looks like I'm bringing in form group and form control. These are things, capital letters, that I haven't imported at the very top. So those are the things I'm going to import. Import form group, form control. It's a little bit of spacing. React Bootstrap. And it looks like on change, there's something called handle search. So I'm just going to create a function called handle search. It's going to equal a fat arrow function. And we know that from like text inputs and stuff like that, there's an event that fires off. And all I'm going to do to start off is I'm going to console log event.target value for what I typed in. See what this looks like. I'm here. I'm going to the home page. There's a text bar that's coming in for free. I jump into my console. I clear the console. I'm just going to start typing stuff. Hopefully it works. Hello world. So it keeps track, the console logs what's actually inside of there. I can go back, and it all goes away as well. So I'm able to capture the text that I have using event.target.value. So I'll just say let user input equal event.target.value. And now I need to pass that into the articles API. So from there, I am going to do articles API. What was the method called? Search articles. Search articles with user input. Should we use an async await kind of thing? I don't know how, so I'm going to do it for the sake of time. I'm going to get some sort of response. And from there, I'm going to set state. All articles API data is going to be response. Let's see, where did I blow up? Not them. Set state, all articles API. Oops, as a dictionary. Let's see if this works. I'm looking for voluptas, V-O-L-U-E. So you'll see that voluptas and all these other ones with just voluptas works. Let's try it again with rerun, R-E. Oh, I've done my, seems like a bug. So when do I want to, like if I were to, if there's nothing inside of there, then I don't want to execute it. Meaning that if the text inside of here is not equal to nothing, then I execute. Otherwise, don't execute. I'm going to add in one extra thing, which is basically if user input does not equal that. Sorry, I forgot to this is JavaScript. Then do all this. Let's try this for now, and then I'll try your method. So let's try this again. I'm going to look for ATQUE. ATQUE. So I just have the ones with ATQUE right there, and somewhere else inside of here. Back, 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 back. So it still works. Now let's try Marcus's idea. If no user input. ATQUE. Nothing works. Great. I would change this into an async await, but I don't know how to do that. So somebody tell me what to do there. Async. Let's not do it as a parallel function. Okay. Is it just, if it doesn't equal that, let response equal await that, and then it's just this dot set state of all articles API, basically this line. I'm just gonna move it up, and then I can get rid of all this. Is that right? Let's see. All right, so I'm going to reload this page. I've got all my stuff. I'm looking for AU. AUT over here. AUT. Oh my gosh. Cannot set state of undefined. Huh. What's that? Is that the case? I'm looking up here. Let's try it your way. I put a wait in the front. All right, this loads up successfully, and if I do AUT, everything is still broken. Component did mount is a lifecycle method that belongs to this particular component. It always knows what this is. Handle search can be passed down from home page to another function, to another component, to another component, to another component. And as a result, it doesn't know what this is. So you either need to bind it down over here saying that we're talking about this particular component, or I need to make this a fat arrow function. So that, again, the concept of this is kind of like, imagine if you're in a nightclub and you're a VIP for the night. You can go up to the bartender in the VIP area and ask for Cristal champagne, right? And then they'll give it to you because you're within the context of the VIP area. Like if you've ever, so you're at a nightclub, there's two sections. There's one for the regular people, one for the VIPs. When you're in the VIP area, you can just ask a bartender for Cristal. And because you're within the context of the VIP lounge and you're already inside of there, the bartender will be like, here's a glass of Cristal. Now let's pretend for a second you're feeling adventurous. You want to go outside of the VIP area into the general public area, and there's a bar there as well. When you ask the bartender for Cristal, they're going to say no, because it's like, I can't serve that to you. But you're a VIP. You left the VIP area to go into the non-VIP area, the general area. So you need something that basically tells the bartender at all places to say, when I ask for Cristal, I'm going to get Cristal. So when you leave the VIP area, you get a wristband. The wristband, you're going to walk up to the bartender and say, I'd like Cristal, and you show them the wristband, and then no matter what, they're going to give you that Cristal. That's what .bind this does over here. This handle search can be used within the context of home page. It could be used within the context of section page, the navigation. It could be passed in no matter where it is. When I bind it to this particular home page, by doing .bind this, I have handle search, comes up here, and then it says, this.setState, what is this? Oh, you bound it to the context of home page already. The other option, so that you don't have to do this, is you make this a fat arrow function, which I don't know how to use. Oh, God. Is it?
So handle search equals async.
Handle search equals async.
And then fat arrow.
Fat arrow. Is it this? Event. So AUT, back. Fat arrow. Sorry. I do need the await. It's right down here. This one. Let's hover over there. Await has no type. Okay, if I get rid of that, what happens? AUT, back. No effect. Yeah, I didn't think that you needed a await over here. The await is just when you have, basically what's happening here is I have a function called handle search. I'm saying that's an asynchronous function, and I'm making it a fat arrow. Fat arrow functions are automatically bound to the context of where it was called. So it's, this handle search always knows that it's part of home page because it's a fat arrow function. The alternative is if you don't want to do a fat arrow function, you have to do a .bind this on the bottom here. I've got let user input equal whatever I typed in. As long as it's not equal to an empty string, I'm going to make a request out to a particles API. I'm going to await the response. So again, this is an async await. I'm awaiting the response from that, saving as response, and then I can overwrite the particles API. I'm going to stop recording there, and I will see you all tomorrow.